All right, welcome everybody to the, what month is this? September 25th Finance Committee meeting. We do have our members of the Finance Committee here with Councilmember Keppel and Councilmember Bullock. Right, I got the Finance Committee, right? Yep. And me, the chair. We also are joined by Councilmember Cindy Marks, Councilmember Tristan Rader, and Councilmember Kyle Baker, and members of the public. I'm going to start off doing some quick housekeeping. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes from the previous Finance Committee? All right. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. Any discussion on those?
Just a great job by our new intern on preparing those minutes.
Oh, didn't
Not
bother
here, but
showing up
putting it.
today, but that's fine. All right. Closing discussion. All in favor? Aye. All right, that motion's passed. So we are here for one item, and it's one that is pretty important because our budgeting document really is the moral document, the visionary document, statement of the city. And our finance department really does a really great job of really organizing the budget book, which will be coming out in the next month or so, to really articulate what the priorities of the city are. And I think it's also important for members of council to be able to provide the administration of what priorities we see from the community, because I really see us council members as the subject matter experts of each of our wards, if we're at large, I mean, the whole city for them, even though they're all in my ward, so they're all my constituents. But to really provide what we see on the ground every day, talking to residents through our emails, through our phone calls, through text messages, and sharing those priorities with the city. And I really, we started this last year, opening it up to the public to provide what they want to see in the budget. I know last year we had the addition to the skate park was presented by members of the public, and I believe that is now in the capital project, or capital budget, 5-year capital budget for the addition of a bowl in the capital plan. So things do get done because of resident input, and I say, speaking for me, the majority of the policies or ordinances that I put through it always stems from a conversation from a resident saying, hey, there's bamboo going into my yard. Building department says they can't dig it up because there's no authority to. Well, we spoke with Commissioner Parmalee and we figured out how to get authority to it, and we changed the ordinance. Or we have someone saying, I want to keep bees in Lakewood. Well, we passed an ordinance, so now you can keep bees. And those are, I'm just promoting myself now because those are the two things that I have done. But my fellow members are also very active and pass great things too. So thank you, everybody. Chickens, we have the hens from Ms. Marks. So thank you, Ms. Marks. And we'd be here all day if I was to say all the things that our fellow members have accomplished over the past many years for some, less for others. Now, this is how we're going to do it. So committees are, and first, thank you for the residents for taking the time. I know it's very difficult and time-consuming to come to a public meeting when you're not elected. You're a member of the resident, or you're a member of the community, and I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to come here and share what you want to see happen in Lakewood. I also want to thank the administration and the directors, departments of coming, because it's very important for y'all to be here. These are the people that can make things happen. They're here every day working overtime to try and make sure that the city is being run smoothly, that the services are being provided to the members of the community, and that this is an extra burden for them to prepare and to be here on a non-council night when they're not already here. So I thank you for being here an extra day. I really do appreciate it, and that's not lost on me, so thank you. So this is how this is going to go. We're going to do somewhat of an alternating between council and the public, because I don't want members of the public that have to sit here all evening, wait for us to blabber on about what we want to see before you get to say your say. So we're going to do council member, budget priority pitch, and then member of the public pitch. And I'll try to police myself. I'm not good at it, but I'll try to police myself of how long I want to talk. We'll try to, depending on how much time we have, we'll try to keep our presentations to 7 minutes. Does that seem reasonable? Is that enough time for members of the public to, and we could go back and forth with questions. It's really not a formal process. It should be more of a conversation. Now, if any members of council want to do a quick opening, they're welcome to. I'll go to committee members first. Ms. Keppel, would you like to say a few words? Go ahead.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and for organizing this. I think it's important that we take this extra step to make sure that we do invite members of the public to participate, and I share your thanks of all the directors and the mayor and the staff for being here and taking an extra night on committee night and not full council night. So thank you very much for your time. I do want to make sure we get to the members of the public who have taken the time to be here. I appreciate that. For anyone listening at home, if you have feedback for us, you can always still email us or call us or text us and get that feedback to us. Do you want us to go into priorities now, or? Okay. Okay, well, then that is my hello and thank you. And I also just want to acknowledge that I really do want to thank Chairman Schachtner for making this step towards participatory budgeting, particularly when we see some of our neighboring cities being reluctant to do that level of participation. So I appreciate that we are doing that here in Lakewood.
Thank you. Anybody else? Mr. Bullock, quick word, or you could wait until.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the process. I'll hold my comments until later in the meeting. Thanks.
Anybody else? I'll look to my right because I'm so used to looking to my left. Ms. Marks, do you have anything you'd like to share?
Not directly right now. I'll wait until we're in deeper discussion.
Mr. Rader, Mr. Baker. Okay, excellent. All right, so since I'm the chair, I guess I'll kick it off because I have control. And so I sent an email, Ms. Bach, and what I've been pitching for the past 4 years, and we got it, was the crosswalk, and that was the only thing I was pitching, the Hawk crosswalk, and it finally on Madison, and it made it into the budget. We'll have further conversations about the progress when we get to the full finance committee meetings. But I think this is equally as important and something that I hear a lot from community members. Let's put it on the big board. Well, the first one, the top one. Wager Park, all right. So Wager Park does not have a bathroom of any sort, and I know that would be quite a huge project to build one. But when I work downtown now for the city of Cleveland, as much as I bash them, don't tell my boss, that I was walking down Public Square and noticed a very nice, portable, ADA accessible bathroom trailer that was installed over there. Now, I would just like to request Public Works, whatever department feels they have the jurisdiction to maybe look into the pricing of these, whether it makes more sense to rent it. I'm sure for contracting for the professional services to maintain that type of facility. But Wager Park, a lot of young kids, young families live in that area with Rosewood, Lakeland, Orchard Grove, Northland, and they utilize that park, and the kids get there, and there's nowhere to go to the bathroom. So I would like to see at least a request for proposals, something like that. Whatever you folks feel would be the most, work best for the city in either purchasing and then getting professional service for it or renting it out. And maybe just for a period of time, let's say from spring through the end of fall or close to the end of fall. Doesn't have to be there all year. But that is my one pitch. Weger Park, portable trailer bathroom. Yes. ADA accessible, so I picked the ADA accessible one.
Thank you. Just question, so the Wager Park does not have an ADA accessible bathroom currently?
Doesn't have a bathroom at all.
No bathroom
There's
at all?
no bathrooms at the park.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow, okay, thank you.
Okay, so that's my one pitch. Pitch number 2. So, I was visiting my father in Florida, and I noticed that every park in Florida, which I guess is not surprising, has these sales for shade. We do have areas in the parks, some areas I could think of right now. Wager Park has really the only spot with any shade is the actual, what is that called? The structure, thank you, appreciate that. Kaufman Park, that area could be lacking shade at times besides the picnic structure. I know we're struggling a bit in Lakewood Park Playground with the trees that unfortunately were damaged when putting in the boxes. That's going to need some shady areas. The splash pad is just direct sunlight, all corners of it. But I understand you're getting away with a splash pad, but I'm just saying. So if the planning department, public works department could also explore these sales, see if it works for our community. I know they can be taken down in the winter, they're not permanent structures. So just for that to look into as an idea, I would like to see that utilized for some of our parks. So thank you for listening to my pitch. Glad I got it on the record. Now, I'm going to ask one of our lovely clerks to grab the public comment sheet and read off the first name. Or I could, yes, first name.
Mary Puno.
Yes, welcome.
A+ on pronunciation, by the way.
That's why she's the clerk.
I assume I have to give address and all that.
Yeah, name and address, please.
My name is Mary Puno. I live at 12223 Madison. For reference, that's the southeast corner of Lark and Madison. Excuse me. I realize parking is a problem all over Lakewood. Birdtown Street parking in particular, and I assume the East End neighborhood parking, are continually getting worse on evenings and weekends. This is especially a problem during sporting, concert, and special events. I'm here to request the northwest corner of Madison and Newman, that the city already owns, be converted into a parking lot and be budgeted and built in 2024. Converting the city-owned lot of Newman and Madison to a parking lot was scoped out and approved by Dan O'Malley and Bryce Sylvester during the Summers administration in 2019. Construction delayed in 2020 because of COVID. Construction was not started in 2021 through 2023 because of other city priorities since 2020. We have ongoing issues in Birdtown because of cars parking across driveways, crosswalks on Madison, and driveways on side streets, as well as directly under no parking signs on Madison. I don't believe that Lakewood Police has the bandwidth to proactively ticket and/or tow illegally parked vehicles unless council wants to expand parking enforcement. When calls are placed to the non-emergency number, logically, they're a low priority. And it's logical, too, that it's a low priority to not be able to access your own driveway. There are currently 43, this is for the numbers geeks. There are currently 43 marked street parking spaces on Madison between Robin and Newman. I estimate the Newman-Madison lot would create over 30 spaces. This is based on a similar lot at 14521 Madison, next to Sarita, that is already municipal parking and has 36 spots. Adding an additional 30 spaces alone would increase city parking by 70% on Madison. We have informally asked 2 cement contracting businesses that hire union labor for an estimate on building this parking lot. Both estimates came in well under $200,000, excluding landscaping and lighting. These are post-COVID estimates. They're not old numbers. I'm hoping that members of council at large and the Ward 4 councilmen, if they have ARPA funds left over, if they would consider pushing this project forward. That's it. Any questions?
Thank you very much. Does any member of council have any comment on that? I'll go to the Ward 4 councilwoman on this one.
Thank you. Thanks, Mary. I know that since I've been on council, you and I have had many conversations about this. This is a project that I would like to see on the 2024 budget. As far as estimates for contracting for that space, I would have to talk with Director Leininger about that. I'm not sure where we are with that. Has that been looked into? Have studies been done? Could you give me some feedback on that?
Yeah, so we started the design process, and good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. We started the design process in 2021, maybe it was in 2021 we started the design process. We ultimately put it on hold because the budget numbers that we were getting back, if we get about 50% through the design, which is for a 16-space parking lot, not for 30 spaces. It's not large enough to accommodate that many spaces. The budget numbers we were getting back were just over $200,000 for an asphalt lot, and if we were to build it out of concrete, it'd be closer to $250,000, $275,000. Before we have construction administration, other soft costs that are associated with it. So, because of those costs and other priority in the budget, we ended up not advancing the design any further, and it's currently listed in the CIP, but it is not a funded project in the CIP.
Thank you for that. So what is it going to take for us to get some new cost estimates? Of course, I know a lot of the building materials have gone up, but I'd like to see, I've also been approached by Neighborhood Family Practice, and they also would like to see that turned into a parking lot, and I'd like to see what do we need to do to make that happen. I do have ARPA funds available, and I believe that Councilwoman Keppel does. I don't think Councilman Rader does, but you know, I certainly would be happy to throw in some of my funds to see that happen, but I need to be working with some hard data.
So those numbers are hard based on the 50% design that we have completed. If we were to reprice them, I suspect it would be the same because we had some factors built into it for labor and material and labor increases. So we feel pretty comfortable that those numbers, all in for an asphalt lot, including the construction administration and inspection, is going to be close to $250,000. And you add in the construction administration and inspection on a concrete, is going to be closer to $300,000.
So an asphalt lot would work in that area, right?
Yeah, it's a matter of preference at that point. There's pros and cons as far as from a maintenance standpoint, and then pros and cons from an aesthetic standpoint as well.
Well, I think, well, I need to work with you to determine what is it that we can do to get it on the budget for 2024 so we can start implementing this process. I agree that parking is an issue over in that area, and I don't want to see us making space and place and money available for other projects around the city and ignoring this important issue for the Birdtown area. And it's going to become even more prevalent when the space opens up right there.
I'm sorry?
The space that's opening up, the construction's not done yet, where the old Byright used to be.
Oh, the Nest.
Yeah, when that opens up, I know that they're going to have parking, but that's going to attract more people to the area as well. So I'd really like to be working with you to see what we can do with the administration and you to see what we can do to make this happen.
If I may, the parking behind the Nest is already full during the day. So once the bar opens, I don't know where those people are expected to park.
But I think, I personally have never had trouble finding a parking space during the day in Birdtown, but at night, I've driven down, and I agree, there's really, they're parked all over the place. And I know that is even true even on Grace, where I live, with Mayhall's opening the Roxy. By 6 o'clock at night on a Friday or Saturday, Grace Avenue is full all the way up to Detroit. So, I mean, parking is an issue. And where we are, we have the parking lot at Madison Park that also fills up. But, you know, I'd like to see if we own the space and we have the space available, I'd like to see what we could do to convert that into a much-needed parking in that area.
Thank you.
Will you work with me, Director Leininger?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think council ARPA dollars, I think when we set out on that process, the hope was that those dollars would be used towards projects that were priorities, similar to Councilman Schachter's allocating his dollars to get that hawk signal. You know, unfortunately, the city has an exorbitant amount of infrastructure needs. For instance, last year, we spent $38 million on water sewer alone. So if we can deploy those city council ARPA dollars towards important projects within your wards, I think that would certainly help get the project over the finish line.
And thanks, Mayor, I appreciate that, and I'm happy to do that.
Anyone else? Okay. I'm going to go Keppel first.
Thank you, Mary, for being here. Ms. Piano. I just had a follow-up question regarding that with the ARPA funds. I do see Chief Story. I was going to say, so I don't know if this is Director Vargo or Chief Story, and regarding if we were to allocate some of council's remaining ARPA funds for this project, would that be considered an approved use category since this is new construction that is not pandemic related, or it would not?
Yeah, I can just say it potentially could be. It perhaps might be in a QTC, but we'd have to dig into it. I think that's if it touched water sewer, it would be a lot closer to an eligible use category, but it may be in a QCT. If not, it would have to be revenue replacement.
Okay, thank you.
I had a similar question, but just wanted to note, certainly in support of this, something that's been on my radar for a long time, and thank you for continuing to advocate, and hopefully we'll see this done next year.
Okay.
And if I could, I neglected to include as well, we also have to take a look at the amount of revenue replacement remaining. So there's a lot of details within the federal guidelines that have changed a few times over the course of this ARPA dollars being afforded to the city. The devil is in the details. We want to be smart in protecting the city. So there's a lot of what ifs that we would have to work through. But to my point at the beginning, at very, very high level, if it's in a QTC, it may be an eligible use category. But I just want to keep that caveat that there's so many details in these regs. We just need the law department, along with Chief Story and others, to thoroughly review them before we can commit one way or the other.
Councilmember Marks.
Thanks, Mayor, I appreciate that. Can we make this a priority for Ward 4 for this budget season, though?
Yeah, with the commitment of the ARPA dollars, I think it's best we all follow up and see what dollar amount that is, and then certainly work through it as a priority for this budget season.
Okay, great, thank you. Thanks, Mary, for being here.
Thank you very much. Okay, we'll do that. We'll do another public. We'll do public. Council, or yeah, sure. I guess why not? Is everybody okay with that? Everybody's comfortable? All right, we'll go through the public. How about we do Miss Kara Lasher? Oh God, I butchered that. Lasher. I just mumbled over. Yeah, it's too many consonants. And then we'll go through E comment. There we go. Hi, Kara. Name and address, please.
Kara Black-Lasher at 1192 St. Charles Avenue, and I'm the Vice President of CCLAS. Good evening, council members, Mayor George, and members of the administration. So many people in our community are thrilled to hear that Lakewood is building a new animal shelter in the last phase of the refuse and recycling construction project on Berea Road. I appreciate this opportunity to ask that the city consider budgeting for a shelter operations manager for this facility, a candidate that is well-versed in shelter management, which is a unique and separate discipline requiring a different set of skills than that of an animal control officer or an ACO. With a brand-new state-of-the-art animal shelter facility on our horizon, I think it would be sensible to consider this now. This is a public facility that will serve our community for decades to come. Hiring a dedicated facility manager not only makes sense, but would demonstrate the city's commitment to best practices at the animal shelter and underscore our government's responsibility to plan for the long term and invest in community well-being. We anticipate that this facility will open to much fanfare and public support, including a vigorous fundraising campaign. It could be a shining example of compassionate and effective animal care in our progressive city and be a model for other area municipalities, positively impacting not only those animals, but also our people throughout Lakewood and even Northeast Ohio. An experienced shelter manager could usher in a successful grand opening, along with a new era of public trust and confidence in our city to care for our homeless animals and begin to shake off the dog pound perception of bygone years that all municipal animal shelters continue to fight to this day. Never before has the public been so interested and involved in the welfare and care of animals in our communities. As evidenced by the outpouring of interest and support for the recent beagle hoarding situation in our city, Lakewood residents are very passionate about our animals and the care they receive. What the public wants is for our government to ensure safe and humane communities for both people and our pets. Today's animal control services need to continue to provide their original public health and safety function, but now with a heightened community concerned about its animals, they also must focus on overall animal welfare. The public expects transparency and humane care for all animals, and especially when they are in the hands of our government. These and other concerns of the public have broadened the role of animal control throughout the country, making it more about animal welfare rather than just law enforcement. Many municipalities have upgraded the name of these services to animal care and control to reflect the shift in public expectations and responsibilities. As these expectations and responsibilities increase, so too must the staffing. Shelter management and animal control services have differing missions and job responsibilities. Law enforcement is a top priority when public safety agency oversees animal control services, as it does here in Lakewood. An ACO's main objective is to protect the safety of the public where animals are concerned by responding to public safety emergencies involving all animals, such as nuisance and dangerous or aggressive dogs, animal bites, as well as enforcing animal ordinances and laws. This public health and safety function is extremely important, but now our officers are also expected to focus on animal welfare and protection. In contrast, a shelter operations manager's mission, goals, duties, responsibilities are substantially different from this law enforcement paradigm. A shelter operations manager mission would be to provide humane shelter and care for a community's companion animals in need of housing through shelter programs that include foster care, adoption, community education, spay and neuter, and community engagement. By hiring a shelter operations manager, it would allow the ACOs to refocus their skills and experience on their public safety mission while providing specialized knowledge in shelter management to ensure the long-term sustainability of our new shelter. Overall, both an animal control officer and shelter operations managers have valuable skills and experience, but they are completely different set of skills and experience. I believe our community and our new facility would best be served with experienced professionals in both disciplines, animal control services and shelter management. I respectfully request that you consider budgeting for a shelter operations manager in 2024. Thank you for your time. Any questions?
Thank you so much. Any comment, questions from, yes, Mr. Ritter?
First, thank you, through the chair, for being here and for always advocating for our animals and putting so much time and energy. You're my neighbor, too, on St. Charles, always got to mention that. So just so I know in a time frame kind of way, what year is the animal shelter being planned? You might know this, maybe the administration has.
I
that
think it used to be
information.
2025, but I think the construction documents got pulled out of the whole refuse and recycling to be bid separately. So I'm not sure what the timeline is on that.
So all I would have to say at this time, because we're just starting these conversations today, is I look forward to continuing this conversation and whatever we can do to continue to support our animal population. I know we've gone through some changes at the animal shelter down there, and again, whatever we can sort of do to prepare for the future and do that in a way. So would, again, love to engage with you, the administration, in figuring that out. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I'll go to Tom. Okay. I'm going to go to.
Thanks, Kara, for being here. Of course, you and I have had lengthy conversations about this, and this is an appropriate time to bring it up so we can be prepared when the shelter does open. I think these are important considerations that the administration should consider so we can have a state-of-the-art animal shelter here in Lakewood and be a cutting edge for other communities. So I'd like to think outside the box and see what we can do to make that happen. So thanks for bringing it forward. You're a wealth of knowledge, and I've always enjoyed working with you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to support the sentiments here from the CCLAS representative that I think it's important that the city budget fund some animal welfare capacity that could be staffed, that it could also be some operating expenses that aren't that expensive, supplies for the shelter that may, in some years, have been fundraised from private donations, but for $4,000 or $5,000 worth of supplies to keep the shelter going all year, I think the city can easily pay for that, and then private donations may go to the spay-neuter side of the operation. And I appreciate the thoughtfulness behind the analysis that we've got two different and competing. Let me retract competing. Two different components of the mission that needs to be complementary. So I'm aware there's a fruitful dialogue with the administration underway right now. I welcome all that and look forward to working in partnership. Thanks.
Thank you. It's hard, I have to be formal up here, Ms. Flash-Lasher, for being here. I also have to support, I did want to circle back to the question, Director Leininger or whoever from the administration, sorry, Director, good, Director Gordon. I was looking for you just a minute ago. I don't know if I just looked past you or if you just came back in. So both of you, so you got talk in class and you get called on, how about that? The date of what is our estimated date to open the new animal shelter, knowing that it's how complicated construction is right now?
It will be under construction next year, beginning in 2024.
Under construction in 2024?
Correct.
And then would open in 2025?
Yeah.
I'm not gonna pin you to this, I'm just trying to get an estimate.
I was going to answer very
Hesitantly.
very openly there. That is the tentative plan, yes, barring any unforeseen circumstances at that facility.
Okay, thank you. Because I guess, so this is, I think it's a very good idea, given the extended size of the new shelter. I'm going to mention libraries again, but coming from the library world, like, if we were to build a branch that was double just the size of the old branch, we wouldn't build it without a manager to be there to take care of it. So, and I think about that in terms of the operating hours. Our ACOs are very busy taking care of the safety aspects, so it makes sense to me to have someone minding the store while they're out on calls and stuff too, and can be there to adopt out animals, can work with coordinate the volunteers, which those duties have been, sort of clarified, so the city is managing more of those volunteers directly now, transportation of animals to and from appointments, working with community groups who want to volunteer, like we have scouts come in or anybody else that wants to come in and clean cages and play with animals. So there's a lot of that, and it also makes sense to me, I'm just going to lean again on that library experience, is that we might want to start thinking about hiring that manager before and also from the pool conversation we just had, you don't want to open a new facility and then day one and then day two ask for someone to manage it. We'd want to have someone in place who can be looking around and ordering materials, who can be getting procedures in place, recognizing how things are different from the old facility to the new facility. So I think it is something we want to be thinking about sooner rather than later, whether it's in the 2024 budget or in the 2025 budget, but I think it's something we would want to be really thinking about prior to the doors opening, and that person could also be working with the SWAB and CCLAS to hopefully get lots of donations, so it doesn't all have to come out of the city's budget. So, so those are just a few of my thoughts. It is, I think, Lakewood does love our animals, and we want to make sure we have a great facility that's well managed for them.
It's not uncommon for me to say this, but I agree with everything that Mrs. Keppel said, and I appreciated our conversations in the past, and it all makes sense to me. It's not hard. And I understand we really do have to look at, but again, as budgets are, documents that really, they're difficult, but this is a budget priority meeting, and I will just leave it at that. Yes, Madam Mayor.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Thank you for your comments. I know we've addressed this a few times. And as we all know, adding staff is challenging. We have limited resources, and we have to figure out where our priorities lie. And so I need to balance the needs of our entire community and all of our staff to provide the best services possible to the community of Lakewood. And right now, where we really do need some additional staff and council support on this is within our water sewer departments. That has to be a priority. It has been for a long time, but as we see more and more extreme weather, we need to add additional staff to help with that. So my focus in terms of additional staffing at the moment is to deal with climate change and deal with what's going on in our water sewer department. Sure, would I like to add staff to just about every department, every division? Of course I would. We would be more efficient, we'd be better at all of our jobs, but I have to prioritize because at the end of the day, we need to make sure we're providing the best overall services for our entire community. So I respect your commentary. We'll obviously evaluate it. We have in the past. We've done a lot of shifting of what our shelter staff are doing. I'm really proud. Our shelter staff is all union. We have a supervisor in the union. That doesn't happen a lot. It gives them an opportunity to manage, and we have a brand-new shelter supervisor who's doing a great job. And with the new shelter, although it's going to be larger in size, it's also going to be more efficient. We're going to have actually fewer cages than we do now just because of listening to the feedback from the Claus community, the LASWAB community, making sure they're big enough for our cats and dogs. But also it's going to create more space for storage. So really we're modernizing the shelter. So really the needs of having additional staff just clearly aren't there. But I'm happy to have a dialogue to see where we can create more efficiencies.
And if I may? Sure. One of the things about a shelter manager too, and if you consider hiring it in 2024, is they could be charged the lead for like a fundraising capital campaign, like what we talked about with the bricks, and actually come to the community and probably pay for themselves by helping to raise funds for the animal shelter. I think it's one of the few city services that city residents would still donate to. I don't think they would donate to the water or sewer services. I mean, it's an easy ask for animals. So if you had somebody leading that charge also to do a capital campaign where CCLAS could also assist in promoting that. But I believe you could raise a lot of funds for the shelter that way as well, having somebody, a designated person to be fundraising for the shelter.
Thank you. Any other comments from council members? Nope. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate the time.
Thank you for your time.
Let's see. We're going to go Nathan Knoll. Name and address, please. Thank you.
Hi, council members. Hi, Administration, Mayor George. Nathan Knoll, 1441 Lincoln Avenue. I was here last week giving an impassioned speech on the values of flag design, and speaking with council members Keppel and Rader here, and there is a preliminary item document that was distributed with just some thoughts on a very rough budget and what the process would take. What I would say for kind of the reasons that I would pitch like a budget is just as a means of establishing it. This is something that, if done correctly, won't be just a fly-by-night process. Here's the flag, let's just put it on everything. In order to do this correctly, you need to sustain momentum throughout a multi-month campaign. And I think having some kind of budget earmarked for it would be effective in at least getting it started. I do think one of the features of it, as I mentioned, is that it can be done at a relatively low cost compared to other things. And I think taking that to the council, or I'm sorry, to the taxpayers to say that this is, again, something that will benefit you at a low cost would be effective. But I think that's all that I have in my pitch here. I don't know if there's any questions or anything you wanted to add, Councilmember Rader?
Mr. Chair, I'll assume you're acknowledging me.
I'm done with
Yeah, so thank you and I just wanted to make a note. I had sent around, I did a little letter just to kind of organize my thoughts. I'd sent it to the administration, council clerk, and council members. In that, the last page of it is dedicated to this flag idea, including a little preliminary budget, which Nathan sent me, and I made some alterations on. One thing I did add to that was at the part of our conversation that I had with Vice President Keppel, as well as Nathan Knoll, was potentially adding a council crest to that as well, or seal. And I also put a little question mark next to that, maybe a mayoral seal. I won't speak for the mayor. I've not talked to her about that. But certainly, I think doing all those things at the same time would make a lot of sense. And I think it is. No, this would be separate. Yeah, it's a good point. Mr. Bullock said, "Are you in on the flag?" No, not on the flag, but separate and sort of separate design processes, perhaps even, or maybe with the same design process, but separate items. This was talked about, or was brought up when we did this item back in 2018, when we originally thought, well, I brought up that we should do a flag, and we had a contest at the school, got a lot of great responses. It was a wonderful process. Unfortunately, I think other things took priority. We weren't able to complete that process. That was a great exercise. And I hope that we could potentially work together here with Vice President Keppel, possibly the administration, if they were interested in participating in doing some kind of council-led partnership with the community to find that new flag. I really do believe, as I did then, as I do now, it could be something we design and then rally behind as a community. We saw this in recently, even in Ohio City. It's not an official flag. I think the CDC was really instrumental in getting that together. But it's almost on every home in Ohio City has this wonderful flag they use, and that's not even a city. That's just a neighborhood within Cleveland. Of course, Cleveland has had its flag for the last 150 years, or little over 100 years now. So anyway, just want to say that I'm in full support of this. I want to say thank you for coming and bringing this up again. Really got my creative juices flowing, and I think that's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, Ms. Marks. Oh, sorry. Okay.
Hi, thanks for coming back again tonight. I think it's a great idea. So I was so happy to hear you present this to council when you were last here. So I'm happy to work with council on this initiative to make it happen. I think it's a great way to create some excitement and enthusiasm throughout the community to get them on board. So thank you so much for caring so much to make a difference here in Lakewood. So I'm all on board.
Thank you.
I also love the idea. Anyone else want to say how much they love it? Okay. Good. Thank you. So, anything else, Nathan?
That's all. Thanks for your time.
Great. Ms. Ingersoll, if you don't mind, I'm going to skip over you and then get back to you. Is that okay? Okay. I'm going to call over John, the last few letters are little. McGeehan? McGeehan. I missed the "and" part. Yes. Please come forward.
Good
Just
evening.
name and address real
Oh,
quick.
yeah, John McGeehan. I live at 12700 Lake Avenue. And I just wanted to encourage you to redo the tennis courts at Lakewood Park. I think the flex courts, the courts that are down there now have served their purpose, and I think they need to be replaced by asphalt, cement type surface. I think that's basically about it. I think the courts have been there for about 15 years now, since Bill DeBusker installed the flex court. And I think there have been a lot of complaints about it, that it's, when it gets wet, it's treacherous and things like that. So I think an asphalt court, like the new pickleball courts that were just installed, I think that would serve the community well. And maybe even making one more court. I know they took one court away, so now we're down to 3 courts. So if we could, I don't know if that's possible with the land down there, if there would be enough, room to do that, but at least have 3 good courts.
A tennis pro from out west that
Oh,
would,
yes.
if you could say some words
Here,
too.
you can stand.
You could all stand over there, that's fine.
I am the tennis director in Bay Village, and the pickleball director as well. And I teach down at Clifton Beach, and my daughter actually trained at the Lakewood City Park courts. And for so many years, they used to have, I don't know whether any of you remember the Geiger tournaments, but it was awesome. They had 8 courts and then 2 over on the other side, so it was a total of 10. And they had people coming in from all, like, east side, west side. It was adult tournaments. I mean, it was amazing. And I think Lakewood City Park, it was like the place to go to play tennis. There were a lot of them. There was always people there. I know John's
I
been.
played in it many
Yeah,
times.
I mean, it's just, and I actually played in it. My daughter played in it. She's actually the head coach at Case now. But that's something that she remembers, like how awesome that was to have that experience. Not everybody can afford to go to a country club. I am at Lakewood Country Club, at Avon Oaks Country Club, and down at Clifton Beach. But I also, the reason why I do Park and Rec, because I have kids, I have 4 kids right now that are seated for sectionals, and they are Park and Rec kids. So that's why I have been the director in Bay Village for 24 years. So we have pickleball courts. Pickleball is the fastest growing sport in the world. Yes, it is. I am also a pickleball pro, certified, okay? But tennis is growing. I have so many lessons, I'm actually exhausted. I was telling Jason, I go, is there any way I can go? Because I have lessons at 7 in the morning. But I felt it was really important being in another city to say, you know, we're fixing up everything in the center, and it looks great. The pickleball courts, they did a great job. I went over and looked at it. But you have 3 courts. My friend actually put in, Bill DeBusker put in the flex court, and I think it served its purpose because there was no money. Like every city, no one has any money. But I do know that the USTA right now is giving cities grants, which I think is extremely important. We have a grant writer. I'm not sure if Lakewood does, but it is awesome. And I think that Lakewood would certainly be a community that could benefit from knowing that you can get a USTA, grant where they may come in and give you some courts. So you'd have to do that research. I can certainly give you some information if you need more information on that. But I love Lakewood. I've been so involved, and I'm, down at Clifton Beach, but I'm so tired of people saying, oh, I hate Chris, those courts are terrible, because I'm always like, go out and practice. But they come to Bay to practice because our courts are so nice. And why can't Lakewood have great courts? The other thing is, what are we doing with our schools? You've got middle school kids, you've got all these schools here, And you should have a phenomenal tennis program. I know they just fixed the courts over, but they're terrible. They have dogs. I mean, it was the scariest thing ever. Has anybody been to the high school where those tennis courts are? I mean, it's not, yes. I mean, why not put courts over there? We don't have courts in Bay. We actually go to Bradley, which is a city park. They're beautiful 5 courts. You could do something like that in, you know, Lakewood and have that a focal point, have USTA teams. I just think it would be so awesome for the city and the community to just kind of build something that you can do as a family.
Thank you so much for
Yep.
your
Yeah.
input. We did receive a report from Christine
That's me.
Gambro. That's you.
That's me.
Jesus Christ. I need to start paying attention to these things. That'll be made a part of the record and attached to our minutes, and that has already been forwarded to our Public Works Director and Planning Director. I did, right? I forwarded that. Okay, great.
Yeah, we have it, you did.
Okay, thank you, thank you. See, yeah, I'm not crazy. Before I get to Madame Mayor, I don't know why I'm saying that, Mr. Bullock had a comment.
Yeah, sorry, I'll go quickly. I'm happy to support the request for tennis court investment improvement. We have 5 comments electronically also in support, and I've heard from residents for the last 6 weeks about this. We did just repave and improve the Kaufman Park tennis court. Maybe afterwards or in follow-up communication, it'd be great to have some dialogue about what success looks like from your perspective. I know we've got a Merle Park tennis court. We've got them distributed around the city. Love to understand whether you think one district to create a center of gravity and use is the way to go, or distributed around the city is the way to go, or a blended approach. You know, and also your feedback, is this just a maintenance thing? Is it fads come and go? I think a lot of these courts were built when Arthur Ashe was the hot thing, and I'm literally true, some of those 70s courts were built out back in that day. Fads come and go. Or is what's driving you just got to maintain them? You know, and I don't want to belabor the conversation too much. I just yield back the chair, but I am curious to learn a little bit from the experts. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thanks. Thanks for coming. I do remember back in the 80s when every tennis court in Lakewood was filled all the time, playing into the night with lights on, and then it kind of faded away. So I think it is a sport that all people can play. I have friends that are in their 90s that still play tennis on a weekly basis. Not that I do, but I love to watch the sport. But thanks for being here. I think it would be an important addition to the city as we're looking at improving our parks and improving amenities within the city. It would be great to see tennis courts reflourished again. So thanks for sharing your
Yep,
goals.
thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor George, do you have a comment?
Thank you. Yes, thank you for the comments. You know, parks and recreational activities have certainly been a focus for the last few years. We've completely redone Wager Park, redone Kaufman Park with the city's first water feature. We've added, as you mentioned, we added the pickleball courts, of course, Foster Pool. And within the 5-year capital plan, we do have dollars allocated for the remaining parks within Lakewood, because they certainly are a priority. Lakewood Park seems to be up in the next couple of years. The challenge is obviously financials, so this is my plug at council. Any sort of ARPA dollars you could throw this way would be helpful. But it looks like Lakewood Park will be happening in the near future.
Any other questions or comments? Yes.
I don't know if anyone or who could answer this, if anyone can, from the administration. Is there any way that we track tennis court usage? I mean, we don't have monitors like we do on the court, so we have no way of knowing how much the courts are used. Okay, thanks.
Any other comments? All right, thank you very much. Looks like Ms. Ingersoll has stepped out. We'll, in the meantime, if she comes back, I'll give her a text and see. If any members of council want to go ahead, I'll start with Sarah, since she's a member of the Finance Committee, and go ahead.
I'm just noting the time, that's all. Did we want to continue?
Well, I have it set till 9.
Oh, we do?
Yeah.
Okay, I was thinking we were going till 8.
Something
Okay.
to end earlier, but.
Yes, wishful thinking, okay. So we're going through priorities now?
Yes.
Okay. Well, so I do have, so one of, we are facing as a city, as council knows, I'm the council liaison to the ADA Transition Plan Task Force. That task force is wrapping up its work with our consultant on that plan, and that will be coming to us. That is going to be a pretty massive amount of work that's going to need to be done, and really, you know, we are one of few cities that is actually taking this step, so we are more on top of it than most cities, but it is work that really was supposed to have been done many years ago. So the sooner that we can start addressing some of those needs, the better. So that work will be things like making sure all of our public buildings, city-owned properties are ADA accessible. That includes parks. So that's why I asked about the bathroom at, the non-existent bathroom at Wager. But so if there were a bathroom, we would need to have an ADA bathroom there too. I also, for our priorities, so animal shelter manager is on my list of priorities coming up, whether that's in the 2024 budget or 2025. So asking about that timeline, so we'll be looking at that. Continuing to support our urban forestry initiatives and the climate action plan that we adopted. As is noted on our climate action plan, the tree canopy is an important aspect of that climate action plan, and any loss in canopy, we have to balance that with our carbon footprint, as well as we continue to purchase vehicles. Anytime we cannot purchase a vehicle that runs on clean fuel, then that goes into our carbon sort of bank also. So we need to be budgeting our carbon as well as our dollars. So in terms of urban forestry, we are doing a lot of work. Our arborists are awesome. We have a great team for city planning. But we do need to increase our private planning, and so that's where we need to, continue to work on that. We have a great team with the Tree Advisory Board that has a lot of great initiatives. So looking at and there's a lot of grants available there too. So just how that fits in with the budget. I want to continue to look at broadband expansion, Wi-Fi in the parks, and Chief Fisher and I talked a little bit about this. I know we want to, when we expand our network, it gives us the opportunity to make public Wi-Fi in more of our parks, and it also allows us to have more security footage in those public places, which is an important safety aspect. Also, I'd like to look at what we can do to add more protected bike lanes, and we've had some discussion recently with the public about potential paths adjacent to the railroad crossing that runs between Detroit and Clifton that a lot of, particularly teenagers after school, but a lot of folks use as a path, which is not the most safe way, but has been going on since, I think, well before Councilman Baker graduated from Lakewood High School. So if there's an opportunity there, as we all know how easy the railroads are to work with, but if there's an opportunity to run adjacent there to add a safe path that is not in connection with car traffic, that would be awesome. And that is the end of my list for now.
Councilmember Keppel. I'll go with, Mr. Rader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As I mentioned earlier, I'd sent around an email. Apologies if I missed you on that email, but there's a couple of things that I list in this letter. And I won't spend too much time on this, but I'll kind of just highlight kind of where my head's at, and it's variations on a theme, really, and things that we've brought up in the past before. And I think things administration also may be working on that I just want to voice my support for, and certainly add, add another voice to the mix, add another opinion, like you need them, to the mix. So first off, we want more staff for every single, no, I'm just kidding. But seriously, something that I know you're already working on and thinking about is how we operationalize this climate action plan, as Ms. Keppel mentioned. And one of the things that the plan does call for, first and foremost, and I do believe this position could be within the public works sphere, but somebody to focus on sustainability, and it could also be a role split between several staff members. However, I found that in talking with other cities, having some centralized person, whether it be part-time, contract person, or somebody that is within public works to administrate that plan, and that person can then be given a budget to fix and work on and set up some of the very things that Councilmember Keppel and others that will, I'm sure, agree with, such as our, first you got to set up the programs, you got to design the programs, you have to do the energy audits, you have to do the benchmarking, you have to do the regional collaborating and things to bring more resources to bear in order to accomplish our very, aggressive climate action plan. And then also continue projects that we've supported already here on council, our Cove projects, Cove Community Center projects, EV infrastructure, fleet, et cetera, Tree canopy certainly being a large part of that and certainly part of that role. So again, I'm not saying anything new. I know that the administration is already thinking about this, so I'm just, again, adding another voice, another thought, and offer any kind of resources I have. Power Clean Future Ohio, we're a member city. They can also provide many other resources on how to shape that role and how to operationalize that climate action plan. I would imagine some of our other colleagues might even have some other thoughts about how this conversation goes as we move forward. So a couple other things, just real quick. I'm having conversations with the fire department as we go, and it's something that I've been passionate about, and I've always included some items in every council priority that I've brought forward that have to do with our brave men and women that are our first responders here in Lakewood. And oftentimes they're the folks that, when there's an emergency, they're the ones that people see first. And one of the things that I know is a need there is a new rescue watercraft. That watercraft is about 10 years old. It is reaching the end of its useful life for what it is. And just a little bit of context, there is about between 20 and 25 rescues that happen every year here on our shores in Lakewood. And oftentimes our boat is the first to arrive. Within 5 to 10 minutes, beating the Coast Guard, beating anyone else, we're the ones that respond to any kind of incident there. And those 5 or 10 minutes can be absolutely crucial if we're beating the Coast Guard by even 10 minutes. It's absolutely essential that folks get services, and it's proven to be a very reliable source of rescue here in this area, and even outside of Lakewood, in Bay and Cleveland areas, as people come to Lakewood on kayaks across our waterfront. All kinds of things happen. That could be the difference between life and death. In fact, if you Google fireboat Lakewood, you'll find numerous articles about how our safety forces have used that boat to literally save lives. So having that at the ready and having it something that is modern, and by the way, this is something that's been included in our budget, so it's not something that's new at all, but I would just urge the administration to move forward with that purchase when, at post haste. It's something that I think our community has served our community well and will in the future. Training, we have one of the best trained fire departments in the entire sort of county, even the West Shore area. To continue to fund that and to support it. And then one thing that I know some of my colleagues here, maybe Mr. Bullock would like, this idea of switching of all of our extraction equipment from gas power to electric. It's reaching, I talked to the chief, it's reaching its end of life right now. A lot of that equipment. That's equipment we rely on to get people out of vehicles. And we're encouraging people to adopt EVs, which is great. My wife owns an EV. We bought an EV for her recently. I also want to make sure that the equipment is up to the task, and the training's up to the task of addressing these changing cars these changing trends we have. And we want to make sure that our FD, of course, we're up there. We want to continue to be that standard bearer moving into the future. And, we'll see what that might cost, but I certainly would support switching out all that equipment Though it doesn't use a lot of fossil fuel, it certainly would be a good step forward. And if we can set the trend for the area, if we can show other federal departments that this is something, we could start a trend that actually does add up to some carbon reduction, which I think is good. And there are battery-powered options and other types of electric options for that equipment. And again, all of this equipment is reaching its useful life, end of its useful life. It's not like we bought anything new in the last couple of years. This is stuff we need to replace anyway. Let's go battery. And then, as mentioned before, we had the flag concept. A relatively small investment, I think, for a huge community sort of rallying point. So anyway, that's all I have for us today. Again, these are all ideas, very inception, beginning of the conversation type things, as far as I'm concerned. And again, I fully believe that, in fact, all of this stuff has been percolating around City Hall, and I have no doubt the administration is working very hard on a lot of this. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember Rader. Anybody else? Mr. Bullock.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Are we through the public comment part? I could hold if...
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, thanks. So first, thanks for hosting this meeting, and to the administration for engaging with us. We're verbally presenting tonight. I suspect it'll be important that we do some kind of formalized written communication to follow up, unless Director Rancourt is the best note taker on planet Earth. We're talking, we've got a lot of content flying through here, and to get down to brass tacks probably is going to need some written follow-up. I'm happy to do that for the ideas that I'm putting forward. The colleagues to my right and left both hit upon a lot of good themes that I certainly support. The stuff I want to talk about today falls into ongoing or old and some new ones. Quickly on the old, maybe the one that bears the most talking about is for Commissioner Parmalee, commercial property forward to accompany residential property forward. We call housing forward, of course, which has been underway for some 10 years now. But commercial property forward, I think, has just gotten underway in the last 12 plus months or so. I'm eager to continue, learn from that effort, and potentially expand it with the hope and expectation that that will help us to have more effective code compliance with commercial properties in much the same way that we've had a success on the residential side. I don't know if that's a additional expense. Okay, so I'm seeing a nonverbal saying that that's not an additional expense. So that may be more just a prioritization of our existing capacity. But I think that's essential. And given the fact that we've experienced price pressures prior to COVID, COVID hits, that throws a curveball, that's important for us to think through.
So if there we go. Commercial property survey is already done. We're getting the data into the GIS layer, should be complete in about 3 weeks. So we've already done the first commercial property survey. We hit that this year.
Okay, wonderful. And
that.
so, Mr. Chair, with your leave, perhaps we could, once that's ready for discussion, we could hold a housing committee hearing and hear the insights and review what we've learned and where we kind of go from here. But I welcome that. Thank you for that report.
I'll let you folks know when it's done, for sure.
Thank you. That's great. On a related note, so a new proposal, which ties into what we just discussed, would be, it's kind of a hybrid between building code and the planning department and climate action plan funding and implementation. That would be energy efficiency. Building energy efficiency work is named as a key priority for climate action plan success. It also is a 2-for-1 or even a 3-for-1. It invests in properties, it insulates against the cold, it insulates against the heat, it reduces your bill. I was at a NOACA planning session here, and they identified that as one of those tactics or measures that are win-win across the board. It's complicated, though, and getting the education task begun or facilitated somehow is what's on my mind. I think we have a partner potentially in OPEC, whom the city works well with already as our aggregator. They've got a lot of capacity and maybe some grant funds. but it may require some city work to coordinate, whether that's through the landlord training. Really, I think the landlord training is primarily focused on residential landlords, but it could well also be in commercial landlords. I'm looking at Law Director Vargo because I think the law department has traditionally done the landlord training as a catch-all and a legal responsibility training, but sometimes there have been focuses on different training sessions on different elements, and so a building department and/or planning department component to that would be, I think, strategic, because we don't know how to do this work citywide, and our plan, in theory, calls for us accomplishing this in 10 years. So if we got some focus on this in the next year or two, and then some real-world data testing, that would be valuable to us in a number of regards. Likewise, affordable housing has been a major subject. This is more of a brainstorm. I could really, frankly, lean on some colleagues in the administration and on council to workshop this better. But as we've studied, we've learned that affordable housing really traces back to the business plan or the financial terms of a structure. And so if you've got a market rate bank loan for a rehab or a new construction, odds are you're going to have to charge market rate mortgages or rents. So if you want to have affordable housing success, you need affordable housing business entities or nonprofits to do more projects in Lakewood, expand that capacity. How do we attract those? Maybe there's some staff time to cultivate relationships and attract that kind of deal flow to Lakewood. Maybe there's some financial incentives. I don't know. But I certainly think if we're serious about moving the needle on that measure, we probably need to keep building our strategy. We're doing some good work now, although we're waiting on the COVID construction market to get some of our pending project developments that are permitted and approved actually built. There's at least 3 of them, not counting the Lakewood Hospital site, that's waiting. We've already talked about an additional Wi-Fi hub near Foster Pool and Lakewood Park Playground to better serve during the surge. And they're not 24/7, 365, but quite a number of events bring a huge people bomb there. And using the parks these days and sharing with your neighbors in the world how great Lakewood is on social media is a normal experience. And boy, would it be great if Meet the Trucks could be, you could upload videos and all the rest, tell the great story about our city team. Same goes for everything else that brings people to Lakewood Park. Parking capacity analysis, this is a planning and Lakewood Police thing. I think Lakewood Police currently administers the permitted parking for city-owned lots. So if I'm a business, I apply to the police department to get a permit on whatever terms it is. But I'd like to see, we may be due for an update to analyze, have we right-sized the permits to actual needs and freed up whatever space in our scarce downtown parking for non-permitted public parking. And that's a conversation I had with the police department prior to Chief Fisher being the top leader. There's at least one lot behind the Starbucks where that, I think, applies. I don't honestly know if other city-owned lots around the city could use an analysis and a recalibration. But if we haven't done that for some time, and I'd be surprised if we have. The last parking study I could think of was 8 years ago or something, right? Truck Park, well, right at Truck Park, or to help also with hot commercial districts like around the Lakewood Truck Park. So that's an idea where we could stretch, you know, you can't invent space, but if you use space more efficiently, it's almost like you did invent some space, some parking space. Cove Church implementation, that's kind of an ongoing idea. I know City Council has allocated a meaningful amount of resources to get battery backup rather than diesel or natural gas backup to make that an emergency shelter. We need to start with an energy audit to know what's the capacity. We could also, there's some exciting options to leverage federal monies to maybe make that even a more ambitious project. That's going to need some thought and expertise to run down what's possible and what's not possible. But I think we've got an exciting potential there that could even become a first node for the county micro grid. So that's more neat. That might well be an example of either contract, if we don't want to do in-house staff capacity in the planning department, either we can get a contractual analysis or you know, just workshop how we might get this done. But I do think there's a bunch of tax credits and monies available today that weren't available 15 months ago that we could do some exciting work there. Final thing, communications for City Council. I'll put that on the table for the 10th year in a row and see if we might actually do something at least incremental to improve. But what occurs to me is that City Council communications capacity probably ought to include two-way communications, the ability to survey the public. You know, the administration does a good job of this. A lot of our nonprofit partners do a good job of this. Those survey tools need some focus time and some staff time to go through it. And so that's an example of how the City Council could, say, even just quarterly, do some thoughtful analysis on a public concern. And we've got plenty of good ideas. Getting them coordinated and taking initiative on the public conversation would be welcome from my perspective. Thanks, and I will follow up with a written summary.
Thank you, Councilmember Bullock. Anyone else? Yes, Mr. Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, everyone from the administration, for being here. You know, the saying goes that, show me your budget, I'll show you your values. So, you know, I think it's certainly, it's one of the times in City Council we spend the most time on during the season, so certainly worthy of doing so. These are probably not going to be a surprise as far as some of my budget priorities go. They're kind of what I focused on through the ARPA process as well. Parks and slowing people the hell down. So the first one is Niagara Park. It was on the capital budget for 2023, working with the planning department on that. $75,000 was budgeted, and that kind of rolls into some of the ARPA allocations that I worked on and a lot of our colleagues supported in kind of the ODOT-owned lands area. We are still working through with ODOT. Things take a long time in state government, but Director Leininger and I are doing our best to get them moving on that, which should add 4 acres of parkland to the south part of the city, which is pretty excellent. Traffic calming, also supported that through ARPA, but, you know, am interested in making further investments. You know, I drive down Clarence on my way to council. I think every street should have speed bumps on it to slow people down. These are communities, they're not highway adjacent homes. So, you know, interested in supporting that and further the work that the administration is already doing in that area. Having a conversation with the administration and the schools about traffic guards and crossing guards, finding ways in which we may be able to enhance our current network. So that's a priority. I'd like to see us think about. It costs about $7,000 to $9,000 per traffic guard. Hard to hire them, though. It's a tough job, tough hours, so trying to work with the administration to figure out ways in which we can do that. Urban forester, I know Councilperson Keppel talked about that. You know, it's one of those positions where when we think about kind of some of our goals with the tree canopy in Lakewood, we're doing a lot of great work within the public right-of-way, but most of the canopy loss is not from the public right-of-way, it's from private properties. Having a real sophisticated urban forestry program with a person in that role, I think, would help us be a leader in that world. And, you know, I think about, and I know the mayor even mentioned when she was on council, she thought about working on some legislation to have like a permit for potentially taking down trees on private property. I do think that there's a way in which you may be able to, through a really sophisticated urban forestry program, to say like trees of a certain DBH, which is diameter breast height, you know, the diameter of the tree, like that if they're really, really big, now I don't know what that number is, I'm not in the field, but that it doesn't just provide a benefit to your property, provides a benefit to the community, to the neighborhood. So you should have to show that it's either, you know, a danger or something in order to cut it down. And if it isn't a danger, then you should pay a fee. And that fee would then go in to then people could apply for essentially what would be funds to help hire a forester on their own private property for trees over that certain DBH, so big trees. And you'd have to kind of get into the data of how many of those are actually in our community, so we could right-size it from a funding perspective, so that it's a stick and carrot approach to big trees on property. The last one, a lot of residents have reached out about, we're doing a lot of sewer work near the lake where some of our rights-of-way hit the lake, particularly the Edgewater and Webb area. Right now, there's just like a couple lamp posts there. I would love if, we could explore some modest improvements there. Nothing crazy, but, maybe a swing or a bench or something so folks can stop in that area and utilize that public space. So we'll be working further with the administration on those things. But so parks and slowing people down.
Thank you, Councilman Baker. Anybody else? Nope. Great. Huh? Cindy, did you want to say anything? You. I'm looking at you. Yeah.
Sure.
Name and address, please.
Cindy Strebig, 2066 Baxterly Avenue. Thank you for asking. I was just out canvassing today, and to Mr. Baker, everybody's going way too fast in Lakewood. Everybody's got to slow down on every street, especially around the St. Ed's area. People are terrified for their children to play in the front yard because a lot of the young men coming out of that school are zipping down to 90, and it's a mess. That's that neighborhood. There's some concerns about deer on the lake. Trying to think of that woman's name. I was canvassing, and she said, anything in my front yard you want to plant, come and dig it up. She said, because the deer come through, and it's just a salad bowl. So anything you want, come and help yourselves. And then, of course, there's a rat issue in some neighborhoods, including mine on Baxterly. So we know that there's some issues with that. Overall, though, I think people are pretty happy to live here in Lakewood. And I haven't heard anyone tonight talk to additional resources for senior activities or any resources for the LGBTQIA community. I didn't hear anybody mention any of that. So thank you for asking. I appreciate it.
Yes, Sarah.
Ms. Strebig, if you don't, sorry. Do you have thoughts about resources for either of those groups that you think should be prioritized, like specific resources that you think should be specific?
I think Lakewood Alive does a lot with the senior community. In talking with Mr. Andrews, they seem to come up a little bit short there. I'm not sure what the processes are on how they get funded. I'll probably learn more about that in January. But at this point, I think that they're doing a lot of really good work to help seniors stay in their homes. And I know that listening to you all for the last year, for all of you for the last year, that is a priority to try and keep our seniors in their homes as long as we can. And I think that Lakewood Alive does a good job with some of the programs that they offer. So if any additional funding could go toward that, I think that might be a good idea.
Any specific resources for the LGBTQIA community that you would like to see?
I think that we need to get ahead of June as just 1 month recognizing this community. I think we need to start recognizing this community in January through educational programs, teaching families what it means to have a trans child and how to support that person. And I'm not sure which department that falls through. I'm thinking Human Services, but that would be a good one. Also, the Studio West 117th project over there. I know they're doing a lot of good things. I know Ms. Marks has been working a lot with them to make sure that they're getting some of the resources that they need there.
And that's a good point about We do actually, Director Barry's not here, but it is in Human Services, and we do actually have, the city's been working with Colors Plus that does programming at Cove Community Center. There's support for trans youth and also for parents, caregivers, guardians of trans youth to learn about how to be good caretakers. And supportive. So that is a great program. But to your point, and I know Councilwoman Marks and I have talked about this too, that is another priority area which I neglected to mention. I spend so much time in human services with both with Community Health Action Team, and I also chair Health and Human Services Committee. So like I sort of left it off because I just do it all the time. But to that point though, I do think that there is some space there where the Cove Community Center, and as we were talking about with the bistro recently too, that there is probably some conversation to be have about expanding both how we approach that as a community center to add to run services, what those hours look like, what those programs look like. It is sort of maximized on space right now, and our staff are certainly stretched and working very hard. So I do think that there's conversation we had there. I don't know what it looks like, but just to that point, that there, for those who don't know, that there are some supports there. But always welcome your ideas.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
All right. With that, I want to thank everybody again for taking the time, an extra day. I won't hold you any longer. Without objection, I'm going to adjourn.